11:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the April 13th Policy Committee. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to address a conversation some of you were witness to that we were just having between board members. I'd like to make it clear that the members of the Policy Committee are myself, Juanita, Jason, and Curry. Best practice in school board governance is to have board members assigned to committees and have those committee members represent the work of the board to the full board and then come together and vote. This is to spread the work of the board out evenly for us to have trust and collaboration amongst board members and to work effectively. As I'm sure many of you who work daily know that as part of a team, oftentimes there are different roles and assignments. As part of that, the board has been asked to only attend the committee meetings that they are assigned to. And so I want to make it clear why board members who have chosen to disregard board leadership and disregard the requests that the team has made as a whole in accordance with effective board governance and guidance from the state of Pennsylvania will not be acknowledged for additional commentary and are leaning into the privilege of being a board member and misrepresenting the ways in which we've been asked to work together. And so just want to make that clear, since some people might have heard a back and forth, and also continue to iterate to the community the expectation and also the continued divide within this board of how some choose to disregard how the board is supposed to work, not according to Anna, not according to Curry, not according to specific members, but actual best guidance and governance in the role of being on the board. So that being said, just want to also bring up and share with everyone the continued reminder in response to community feedback around having the opportunity to address policies and topics that are either on the agenda or not. We'll go through our meeting. Folks will have the opportunity to speak on the specific policies that are on our agenda tonight and that were shared publicly with the community for comment. And then at the end, if there's time, we'll take comment on any other policies or issues that aren't on the agenda tonight. So I will now turn it over to Megan and Frank to get us started.
All right, good evening, everyone. My favorite night of the month, policy. And just to give an overview of what we have prepared for this evening, I see it as an agenda in two parts. The first part are our business items that we are recommending specific revisions to the items that are both under proposed for adoption, or in this case for repeal, and also those items under first reading. And then later on in our agenda this evening, we have items that are listed under for discussion that have emerged from conversations and discussions we've had both as an administrative team, as a larger staff, and also what we're hearing from the community and the board as well in terms of topics of interest. So we wanted to lay out policy work that has been done previously that maybe people are not aware of, places where there might be opportunities for updates or revisions to make sure that our policies reflect our practices and needs right now, and then hear again any other ideas or conversation from the community. So that would be the second part of the agenda. We really do want to get to the business items, which I don't think will take very long this evening, but with that, I'll get started. The item up top under proposed for adoption, which in this case is for repeal. We've talked about this Scholars Program of Study policy for a few meetings now. It's being proposed for repeal because it is not a practice or program that we
That was me. Sorry.
Okay, that we are, that is currently active. This doesn't prevent us from looking at this again in the future or a similar type of opportunity, but because this is no longer a program that exists as an opportunity for our students, we are recommending this for repeal, and this is the second time we've looked at this, so there are no further revisions that we're proposing at this time other than to repeal it.
Jason, Juanita, Curry, any questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote to move it forward then.
All right. So that'll appear on the regular business board agenda next week. On the first readings, the first two items, policy AR 235 and 235-2, as well as policy AR 904, both have been updated to reflect the recent new legal requirements for us to provide notification in the event of a weapon or a look-alike weapon on school property. And so both of these policy items were updated to reflect those new requirements. So that's in a few places within the policy, but that was the intent to go in and make those adjustments, as well as a few other housekeeping items, such as names of individuals that have changed that are also reflected in this policy. So policy 235 begins on page 4 of your packet, and the proposed revisions are primarily reflected, do you have it, on page 17. And again, within the AR, which begins on page 22, there are just various references that were updated that are also underlined within the administrative regulation.
So this is a first reading. So just to clarify, because it's exciting, we have a lot of people in the audience tonight. Policy's been a little quiet this year so far. People are getting a lot, parents are getting, and caregivers are getting a lot of notices around this. So this is new, it's coming through the state level, and there's a lot that falls under this guideline. So could you give just some awareness for people online and in the room, kind of what kind of broad stroke this policy is actually doing? So it can be anywhere from a kid like drawing a sword because they're learning about Japan and samurais, correct?
Yes, well, it is part of our calibration is to make sure that what the law requires, which can include like look-alike weapons, whether it goes so far as a drawing, it depends. It depends on whether that constitutes a threat. But we do have levels, and we did I can reference the letter, if I can remember the date, Dr. Manley, that you sent that has all of the information that talks about the various tiers of notification that we provide, from like, don't worry about this at all, because it was a child in second grade that made a samurai sword, a replica, in art class, or brought one from school, and we understand that seems like an extreme example, but we're not really permitted to make a lot of discretionary judgment calls. So in an abundance of caution, we share that this is what the nature of it was, just letting you know, and trying to reassure families that it was of a sort of a non-threatening nature, all the way up to something that would be deemed an immediate threat where police are involved and we're going through our crisis response protocol in those events, in which case we tell families in the letter explicitly, as much as we can, the details of that event. Dr. Ranelli.
Yeah, quickly, I think what is more giving us purpose to notify are the incidents on the lower end, or the not to worry at all. I brought a kitchen knife to cut a cake. So the law states, regardless of intent or type of weapon, or look-alike weapon, we have to notify within 24 hours. So I work at ShopRite, and there was a box cutter in my pocket, and I forgot it. Here, the assistant principal, I forgot this, I had this. No intent, but I think that's the biggest change for us, is to whatever the intent was, and whatever the level of look-alike or weapon it is, we have to notify within 24 hours, so.
So we did send a letter about this new notification policy to all families on January 7th, and that letter is available on the website.
Thanks.
Any follow-up questions, Corey?
No.
Okay. Jason or Juanita? Okay.
Okay, we'll move ahead with those revisions. Also, policy 904, beginning on page 40 of your packet, references those requirements as it relates to public attendance at school events and the related notification for those situations.
Any questions, committee members, team?
All right, moving right along. One of the other items that we have on for a first reading tonight, and just for the good of the audience here, because sometimes I forget we're in such a routine and we don't always have new faces in person, although I know many people follow us online. We were in the process of looking at a lot of our policies in the 100 series. And as I've shared, sometimes we have to jump around from that cadence because we have updates such as this weapons policy that we just discussed. The 827 conflict of interest, there's some revisions that were proposed by our solicitor's office as a result of anticipating some upcoming audits. And so that was the purpose for updating our policy now to ensure that it reflects the appropriate language and for those anticipated areas of inquiry. So you'll see some changes on page 45, 47, and 49 of your packet.
And just to be clear, Megan, so this applies to employees and board members. And also, if a board member is to abstain from a vote for this reason, they need to name that it's for conflict of interest. Is my
That's correct.
understanding? I
Yes.
just want to be explicit with that. Okay. Did you have a follow-up, Curry?
Sure. Only for this reason. They have to name only for this reason if they abstain. So this is the only abstention that has to be explicitly spelled out. Just wanted to clarify.
If there's a conflict of interest.
Yes.
And an individual's abstaining from a vote because of that, then they have to articulate that. And as Denise is saying to me, there is a form that you need to fill out in the event that you do that.
Jason or Juanita, Jason, you have something?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So the additional language, so I'm a little confused as to for federal purposes, a conflict of interest. Can we explain what we mean by that? Because if you go to page 47, the first paragraph at the end, it talks about the financial or other interest in tangible personal benefit. So I'm just a little confused as to, for federal purposes, what we're referring to. Sorry.
So this language comes recommended from PSBA, again, in anticipation of any federal audits. I can quick check to see the specifics. But again, this is just recommended as a kind of broad umbrella protection, kind of like a crossing the T's, dotting the I's, stating explicitly for federal purposes, in part because any federal audits, that's going to be something that they're looking for.
Got it. So if we could just I guess what I'm asking is if we could just double check, because it looks like the first paragraph on page 47 has similar language about federal awards, and then it goes into board members and their immediate family business partner. So it seems to be very similar tracking language. I don't know if necessarily, maybe we need to specifically have for federal purposes in order to have it, but I just want to make sure that we're not just being duplicate. So,
This is a good catch. Let me check. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Jason. So we can bring that one back. Do I need a Curry? No, okay. All right, Megan. Any ARs to dig into?
Not that are proposed for discussion right now. We already covered the two that had some revisions. I think we're ready to move on to the next section if there, I don't know if there's any public comment that you wanted to take on these items only.
Good call. Thanks for reminding me of my new process and procedure takes a team. Are there any comments, public comments in the audience or in here related to the policies we just discussed? Amy, anything online? Okay, thanks. Okay, Dr. Rinelli?
Yeah, so the next section of our meeting, and I presume many of you are here for that, first of all, it has to do with technology and the policies that are attached to technology. First of all, personal devices, and then the technology for the classroom. I want to start by saying I really appreciated our meeting at Harriton High School, whoever got a chance to participate in that. I know the board members feel the same as I do. I thought it was a rich discussion. We very much appreciate and respect everybody's opinion who was there, and we really want to thank you for all of that information. The next, if you have the agenda, the next section is broken down into A, B, C, D, and E. I think it'd probably be best if the board really starts to talk about A first, which is the off and away policy, off and away procedure, where we have that, and to really kind of flush that out a little bit more. But to be clear, we have an off and away expectation where it's bell to bell from K to 8, and we don't have that in high school, right? And you all know the procedure and the expectation there. So I do want to start, and I'll turn it over to Megan to see if she has anything to add first, but I want to start with the board discussion around what we do there, why we do it, and then we'll take public comments just on the off and away, and then we'll move to instructional technology, have that discussion, and take public comments, if you're okay with that.
Just to take one beat on the meeting.
Yeah.
Just real quick, one beat on the meeting, and I know many of you were there. I recognize some faces, so thank you so much for coming. A little bit of what Anna said earlier, that was our first community conversations, engagement, and just to take a second for those online and in person, how we're framing those for structure and purposes, we are following best practice around how that committee meeting works. And for those conversations, what we are deeming to do is to always have board leadership there. So whoever is the president and vice president, so that right now, that is me as the president and Todd as the vice president, will always be at those meetings. And whatever committee it goes to, we are going to have the chair and co-chair of that committee there. So that is why you saw Todd and myself there, and Anna and Juanita there as well. So the two chairs of policy and the president and the vice president. And as Anna said earlier, because we work on committee and the structures, which is recommended by PSBA, which is the governing body of the boards of Pennsylvania, this is best practice that we break up, just like every team in America and every business, nonprofit in America, we break up and subdivide. We only had asked and requested that those members be there. And I want to just make a public statement thanking Shayna and Jen and Jason for not being there. And I know it was really hard for Jason being a policy member, and technically the way it worked out, the only policy member not there. But in his full defense, he was following best practices of PSBA, and I promise I took really good notes for him, and we debriefed afterwards. So he's completely up to speed and fully vested and ready to jump in. So thank you, Jason. I really appreciate that work and the effort that you did in trusting your team members to do that. And also why Todd isn't here now, because he's respecting the team to do that work. So when we go into the next one that's coming up this month, it'll again be the leaders of the committee that will go into and the leaders of the board. That will change if it goes into different committees, but this is a new committee for us, so I wanted to take a beat in that structure. And I forgot to tell everybody at the end of that meeting how they work, so I apologize for that. It's a new one for us, so we're getting used to it. So Frank, Megan, back to you guys, and as we're leading through this.
Yeah, so our off and away procedures are tied to our policy 235 and our AR 235, which is our student rights and responsibilities. I'll turn it over to Megan to see if she wants to add anything, and then we'll have a board discussion.
Sure, I thought for the benefit of tonight, which is why the agenda is organized the way it is, and I just want to say for those in the audience, we probably didn't have enough packets for all of you tonight, and with all of these policies, it's about a 200-page packet. They are all connected to what you see in board docs. They're also all online. Nothing other than what we were discussed tonight has been revised in any way. So really, this is truly just about a discussion. So hopefully you can follow along with us, and we'll try our best to keep it up on the screen so you can see it as well. But as Dr. Minnelli said, the policy 235, specifically on Appendix A, is where you'll first see a citation to use of electronic devices, and that's on page 20 of your packet. And that's where we first included a reference to our position on students' personal devices in schools. So because we're at policy, I just want to orient this conversation to where it currently lands in policy, and then we can talk about like where, if any place, do we go from here. Also on pages 54 and 55 of Administrative Regulation 235-1R-1 is where we specifically say, absent a school-based rule or explicit permission, all phones and personal devices must be silenced or turned off and remain in a backpack or locker throughout the day. And that's where that language that we now have as a practice sort of orients back to. So as Dr. Minnelli said, it's essentially a bell-to-bell ban, K-8 currently, and 9 to 12. We've talked about this a lot, that in classrooms it's a ban, and in other places there's an opportunity for students to engage with their devices should they need to during the school day. So that's essentially what our practices are right now, and the reference language in policy and AR.
Okay, so we'll take questions from the board. I also acknowledge probably the four of us could be asking questions all night, and I want to be sure to leave time for the community. So, team, are you okay if we cut our questions off by 8:05? That's 10 minutes. Yeah? Okay. And we might not even use that much time. I just want to be sure to save time for the audience. I guess my first thing I'd just like to ask Megan and Dr. Minnelli, and going through the F, right, that's up here, what is, and Scott, what would actually be the difference of saying that we had a cell phone ban versus what we already have in the procedure that our schools are following in place? Good question.
You mean a total ban, K to 12?
For cell phones, because essentially under 235, it reads as a ban, bell to bell. And so
Absent the,
my
yes.
question's a bit, I read it as a ban 12 bell to bell. It's not explicit in the way that we may move towards, but I'm asking from your perspective, Scott, Megan, and Dr. Minnelli, what would functionally be different in our buildings and for the experience of students?
I'll start. I don't know if I'm going to land this the way you were asking, but I'm talking, it's my understanding you're looking at, the difference would be, in my opinion, is that the language wouldn't change. It could change if we wanted it to be memorialized here. But right now, the school-based rule at high school is not a bell-to-bell ban. And that's allowable under this language. If we were to say, change that rule, then it simply would be high schools would have a bell-to-bell ban, which isn't currently what's being proposed.
Yeah, let me see. Are you asking what the experience of our kid is now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is, as you read this, some could interpret this as a bell-to-bell ban. And how I hear middle schoolers and elementary in particular describe it as a bell-to-bell ban. In high school, I think we've heard from our friends here who are unable to be here, and in personal conversations and in the forum, that it's different based on high schoolers. So I'm asking if it was more explicit than this, and some interpret this as bell-to-bell ban, what would the experience of our students look like? What would be different for administrators that they would need to do differently than they are now?
Right, sure. So I'll wrap this hopefully in a big package here. So right now, our students, it's banned in the classroom, so we shouldn't see them. If they do have them, we're supposed to put them in caddies on the door so they're not on their person. They are allowed to use them in the hallways, in the cafeteria, or at lunch and learn, and other non-structured times. So the fundamental change would be that would all go away. As far as what our administrators would have to do and how it would look, this is where the opinions and feelings come in, right? Our administrators clearly state that the lunch and learn structure of the building and how it runs is set up to where the kids are sort of free to have the downtime they need, and they use that downtime to their benefit. Whether it be to go see the learn part of the lunch and learn is to use a half hour or the whole hour to go see a teacher and do extra learning or extra work or things like that. And they are spread all about the building. They could really get their lunches or if they bring their lunches, get them from their backpacks and go eat anywhere on campus. And the expectation is that they're where they need to be at the next set time start. Okay? So the teachers, administrators really would have an interesting time managing a bell-to-bell band due to the vast structure of lunch and learn where kids are. Not to mention, as I spoke to both high school principals, and I was one myself, a lot of kids use that time to de-stress. They listen to music, they might play a game on their phone. I play a game on my phone to de-stress, right? So, things like that. And they very well, even based on the data, don't feel that that's a big disruption in the school right now to where that would be worth the management nightmare of a bell-to-bell all day. Does that answer your question?
Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to follow my own time limit
Okay.
that I've put in place here. I guess the thing I would like to see as we continue the conversation is what is laid out in the high school handbooks. Because the way I read this is that it should be off in backpacks or lockers, and those exceptions that you reference are not allowable. So I'd just be curious what it actually says in the handbook. We don't have to address it now, but just in looking at the actual policy in AR, something for down the road to consider.
It's articulated. I have that pulled up, and I believe it's accurate for me to state, because I've kind of lived through this, is that we had the off and away policy, and then we memorialized it this way, recognizing that we had that practice set up the way we've been describing it. So this was intended to reflect that practice, to have that allowance of some differentiation, which again, it's in section 1.5 of the high school handbooks. It's in all the handbooks, and that's where you'd find those differentiated rules.
Yeah, I think my perspective maintains the same as I said publicly that night, that the implementation and accountability of individual teachers and principals with this is varied. And so as we think about that, regardless of perspectives or emotions or opinions, that could be tighter either way, even if this is what is in place now. I'll yield the floor to my friends here, or else we'll already be at 8:00.
Who wants to go next? Okay, let's get it. She's given us 4 minutes, so let's hurry up.
No, this is going to be quick. I think, so for me, I think it's great to have a policy, but I think it's the implementation that is the,
Let's be honest, we don't even have a policy right now.
Right,
We have a practice.
But I think that, or practice, I think it's the implementation that I think is also important. So I think similarly, I'd like to know from a perspective, and I don't know if this was covered at at other times, but really, how does this in practice happen, both elementary, middle school, and high school? And, how are teachers, how are administration dealing with it? How often are there issues relating to cell phones with people not abiding by, this, not policy, but this off and away recommendation, or however we want to call it. But I think before we can strengthen or change the policy, I think we need to know how it's actually, in its current form, being implemented, if any. It sounds like it is, but how is it being implemented? And recommendations from, similar to like what you were saying, Dr. Ornelli, about what the administration feels, but what's happening in practice. And I think that would be helpful to know.
Sure, I think as with any policy or rule, the implementation consistently is very important, number one. And as a former high school principal and a superintendent now, I can tell you that it's never perfect. We'd like it to be perfect, but we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and being honest, and it's just never perfect, right? You find a student who gets to fifth period with a shirt that shouldn't be allowed. Well, how did they get through the 1 through 4? We have to address that. I will tell you, you talk about based on practice, right? Personal cell phone issues out of 4,000 as of March 19th, right? As of 4,398 issues out of our Swiss system for discipline, personal issues of devices made up 141 of them. And not a lot. I mean, all the elementary schools, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0. Middle schools, 11, 11, 37, and 10 of those students were repeat offenders. And in high school, there were 63 in one school and 18 in the other. So I think in practice, it works if the consistency is there of the rule implementation, if that answers all of your questions.
Yes, and I don't know if necessarily they would enter it into Swiss if it's like a first time, like, they do. Okay, so I mean, that's important. I would also like to know surrounding districts, like, I think Radnor has some things that they've done, how is that? How has it been successful? Has it not? What are the pros and the cons? Like, I think, having that feedback might be helpful in directing us as to what has worked and what hasn't, as lessons going forward.
Right, so I stood at a superintendent's meeting and we had this conversation, and I don't know of anyone who came forward in Montgomery County and said they had a bell-to-bell and it was either worth it or successful. Most superintendents at the district meeting said, we're not going to do it unless the state tells us to do it because of all the things that I mentioned. I did speak to Ken Batchelor. He's the superintendent of Radnor, and yeah, they implemented a bell-to-bell. First, they tried these pouches, and he says, I walk through the hallways and I don't see, quote unquote, I don't see students on phones, and it seems to be working fine.
Juanita, do you want to go? Or you don't have to.
No, I just have, so what have you seen at our schools when you're walking through the halls?
As you would imagine, through Lunch and Learn, the kids are on their phones if they're sitting in the hallways, but mostly I see, and what I notice the most is their interaction with each other. They're not on their phones only like this, and that's all they do. I mean, they interact with each other, they're outside, they're playing soccer in the courtyard, they're doing a lot of different things. Certain kids need just some downtime to listen to music. Certain kids need to be alone and get that, differentiation. A lot of kids are reading. A lot of kids are doing their homework. A lot of kids are in classrooms. Do I see phones out? Sure, but it's designed to be that way. So you would expect that. But by far, I don't see, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, the overwhelming, like just these kids like zombies like this on phones. And I care about that. I mean, I have 3 kids of my own who are just graduating college now, but going through the time when in middle school kids were having phones, and we disagreed with that fundamentally, right? So I hear, but I walk through the hallways and I don't see any dysfunction. As an educator, who cares about kids and screen time?
And one short question. What about the kids who need the use of their personal device to help with their education?
Well, we would have a district device to help with that, right? And if it's written into some form of assistance for an IEP or things like that, we would make sure that they would have any device that they would need. Typically, we would get a district device like an iPad or something if they needed that help, rather than a personal device.
I do think that's problematic, because a kid's not going to go out into society with an iPad, especially a kid that is small, and a district doesn't provide a phone, which there's a gap to goal there of life, and that is quite problematic. So there's a huge gap there. That's a side note, just want to make that statement. So what I would like to see in trying to understand this is what are the benefits of districts that have done this, and to come back with understanding that if we did, more of a restriction, what are the benefits? Second, there's a lot of gray in between there. A gray of, there's a lot of time in between the halls. There's a lot of time, that we could say there's less time that they could be on their phone, but there's opportunities to have the phone. There's a lot of in between there. To Jason's point, what is the data that we're seeing? So there's a little bit there, but what are we seeing around that? The other thing that I want to put on the table around this is the danger of it being punitive. So what is the danger of it being punitive? Because you start making this, in one sense, teachers saying no, 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 and it starts becoming a punitive thing, then that's extremely problematic as well. But then the other side of it is saying put it in the case and it's removed until lunch and learn, and then it's back out and then removed again. That makes it less punitive. So it has to be systematic, and I think there's a lot of in-between options here, but I would like to see what is the data on when this has been used, and what are the outcomes that has been successful? Because this is experimentating in different areas, and I want to know, what did they do? Where was their success, and where was their failures? Because right now we're doing a lot of what ifs, and I want to make decisions not off of anecdotal data, but what is the real data?
Okay, we went over the time, but that's okay. Policy, we usually, take down the temperature and have fun here. I think just to name, as been named before in policy and has been named at the meeting, the majority of the board is still of the position that this will not change off in a way connected to 235 and personal responsibility, student responsibility will not change in advance of this fall. And we'll continue to have the conversation, follow the state legislature, and see what other data might develop for us connected to the state decision, and also if we were to deviate from any of that. Has Dr. Ranelli, has your position changed at all, or?
No, it hasn't.
Okay.
We would consider, if the board is again, a very big proponent of the board making policy, and that's one of the main roles of the board. If they consider it off and away, weaving that into a policy of its own, we would discuss that as well. So if any position of mine has changed, it would be the current iteration of off and away moved into a policy.
Okay. Thanks. That's a great suggestion, and we can continue to look at that as a committee. Because of the depth and breadth of the topics here, wanted to open it up for audience comments or comments specifically about off and away. If anyone wanted to talk about off and away, number A on the agenda solely. Great, come on up. And I forgot to say this at the beginning. I didn't follow my own time, but we're going to limit comments to 5 minutes per person.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I did sign in. My name is Anna Shaven. I live in Bryn Mawr. I have 2 sons, a first grader and a 5th grader. Thank you so much for your follow-up on this. I was at that March 23rd meeting, and I really appreciate the transparency and the quick action. On your discussion, I'm very happy to hear about it and to be part of it. I think it's a little bit, I think the question could be reversed. Instead of saying, well, what is the world without cell phones? We are the experiment right now. Like, we've only had cell phones for less than a decade in schools. We went for thousands of years educating people and de-stressing and learning and communicating and growing without the internet. And I think as a, negotiation, what about dumb phones? Like, what if we allow kids, if they really need to play games on something, they bring a dumb phone to school? But the idea that we're going to allow the internet to be available to children, like, as a mom, I think in my head, I'm like, it's a nightmare to deal with my children after they've been on the internet and after they've been on the phones. Like, that first 10 to 15 minutes, half hour, even more sometimes, they're not de-stressing. They have lost executive functioning as well as I know what executive functioning is. I don't see how walking in the hallways or intermittent, like being on the phone and then coming to class and being asked to focus and refocus throughout a day is prioritizing their education or their well-being. And so, yeah, I would like to put that out there. I would like to thank you for acknowledging that it's not a policy. It's really just a recommendation at this point. And I think it would take a lot of work. It would. I think we cannot get around that. Parents are doing so much work right now because of electronics and the internet. And the fact that we now have to worry about them being on them at school and being around them at school makes it so much more stressful. But we let the devil in the door. And I think as adults, we have to clean up our mess now, and we have to do that kind of work because it's important, and public education is a good, and so if we need to hire more people or ask for more support in some way, I think that should be on the table as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I just want to clarify one thing. And yes, Off and Away is not a policy, but it's more than just a recommendation. We expect our schools to follow it. So I just want to clarify that. And as we talked about before, as with every rule, getting the consistent implementation isn't always easy. But I think by and large, our teachers are on board, from what I hear, with with all these rules. But I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I wrote a couple minutes for the other part. Oh, sorry, John Bellis, Wynwood.
John, is it for Off and Away or for the other part?
It's not, I wrote something for the other part. But
Oh, okay.
I was going to talk, not this. I want to
Go
stick
for
to the
it.
device
Go
ban
for
real
it.
quick.
Go for
So
it.
just, I love the discussion you guys had. I was thrilled to hear the back and forth. I think to Dr. Ranelli's point, of course, having a cell phone in a classroom is going to make it impossible for the teachers. But most of the damage, or a lot of the damage, is happening in between classes, at recess, at lunchtime. I mean, how do you stop a kid from cheating with Google or AI when he has his device at the lunch hour? How do you stop the bullying, between classes? That's where the dirty photos come in the bathroom that then end up on Snapchat. That's where all the damage happens, or at least a lot of it. Not to mention the whole fact you can't wait to get your phone, go in the hallway and do whatever you got to do. So, look, I'm not in a school hallways like you are. I believe you when you say it's not so bad, but I also believe everything I read and see all over the world, and it seems like it is so bad. And I think, the success stories that we've all read about have all been because the bell-to-bell ban is truly no phone at school from start to end. And as far as enforcing it and chasing people around recess, I get that. It's very simple. 3 strikes, you're out. We see the phone 3 times, it's confiscated, and you get it back at the end of the year. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bellis. I appreciate it. There's a lot I could say to that. I'm not going to, but there's a lot I could say there. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that things could happen during lunch and learn, but they could also happen at home when they have full access to everything. And I do want, and we've had conversations before, I very much acknowledge that this is not a perfect situation, nor is a bell-to-bell ban. So there isn't one perfect situation. There are superintendents who can clearly tell me, I have a bell-to-bell ban in my district, I can call my nephew and he'll answer me in 5 minutes. So none of that is perfect, but I do appreciate your comments.
Go ahead, Amy.
So there's online comments about Off and Away. The first one is from Michelle McGill of Ballackinwood. She says, "We are not running a prison, and proposing a strict bell-to-bell restriction for high school students is excessive and counterproductive. These students are already expected to follow classroom rules, and phones are not being used during instructional time. Policies like this ignore the reality that high school is meant to prepare students for adulthood, not control them at every moment. If we overly restrict students in ways that remove their ability to make appropriate choices, how are they supposed to develop the independence and responsibility required for success in college and beyond? My son, for example, respects the cell phone rules and does not use his phone unless it is during designated times. Skills like time management, self-regulation, and decision-making must be practiced, not imposed. Removing all opportunity for students to make choices does not teach responsibility, it delays it." The next, sorry, it jumped ahead. The next comment is from Subrashini Subramanian of Ballackinwood. "The board was talking about what data is there to support bell-to-bell ban or off and away procedure and the benefits of it. I want to ask what data is there to support the current procedure being a procedure and not a policy. Basic biology and plethora of scientific studies show that the best de-stressor for us is more human connections, and cell phones reduce human connections, especially at an age when students and children need it most." Okay, and then it says Girish Ramaswamy, Ballackinwood, so I'm not sure which is there was one name on the Zoom and one name on the comment. Michelle McGill has an additional comment. Additionally, access to a cell phone is not simply a matter of convenience. It is often a matter of safety and necessity. For many students, especially those who do not live in two-parent households, a phone is an essential tool for communication with a parent. Oops, it just jumped again. Sorry, parent or guardian. Not all families have the privilege of having a parent walk their child to school or drive them each day, which makes access to a phone even more critical. Students' home situations vary widely, and equity must be a central consideration in any policy discussion. Many students rely on their phones for safety, including notifying a parent or guardian that they have arrived at school safely or communicating changes in transportation or emergencies. These differences in access and circumstance cannot be overlooked. These decisions should be remain within the family, not be dictated entirely by the school district. Any policy must be grounded in fairness and equity, recognizing the wide range of student needs and living situations. And then the other commenter is also saying, Dr. Ranelli is talking about having full access to everything at home, but there is supervision. I don't believe there is enough being done by LMSD on technology restrictions. This was evident during the March meeting.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll move on to the next section. Oh, off and away? Yeah, come on up. What's your name? You'll say it at the mic, sorry.
I'm Dean Rosenkrantz. I am a retired teacher from Lower Merion High School. And
where do you live in the community?
It was an honor to teach there. I live in Ardmore, so I'm also a resident here, and see a lot of familiar faces. Good to see you guys. I really wanted to speak to the phone policy because of, for the high school, where it's not off and away, it's this modified version. As a teacher, and I want to emphasize, well, let me start by saying I know that every student's different. In general, in the higher level courses, advanced placement and so on, it's a different environment than in the college prep or the regular courses where I taught. And I found that if the phones are in the hall, even if the teacher is told to enforce the off and away policy within the classroom, it's a challenge. When you get the kids, it's like candy from a baby. You know, the kid's got the phone in the hall, now you have to take it away. Maybe he does eventually take it away, but it does slow down the beginning of class, and then there's the interruptions because the kid pulls it out, and then it's a constant management problem for a teacher. And it's not fair to those kids, in my opinion, that they have that distraction on their person there's all different ways it can be handled, the little pouches in front of the room and so forth, but each one of them has their advantage and disadvantage. And ultimately, it's a big disadvantage, I think, to expect the teachers to enforce that every, 55 minutes when the kids have access in between class. It's really tough on the teachers and really not good for the education, in my opinion.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Any other comments on A? Okay. I really appreciate Mr. Bellis, Anna, Ms. McGill, everyone's comments on this. I think the one thing we can all agree on is it's all top of mind for us, and there's no way we solve it without one another. It's not like technology stops when students leave the home and go to school or vice versa. And so we have to work together in collaboration in an integrated approach to learn and support one another. So really appreciate all the perspectives as we continue to move forward with this. Jason, Juanita, Curry, any final thoughts on A before we move to the second part?
Yep.
Okay. Handing it over to you all.
Okay, so the next part of this segment largely is intended to address district-issued devices and the programs and applications that are connected to them. And again, this is because we're in a policy meeting trying to frame it through a policy lens. It doesn't mean there's not ideas and opinions that aren't yet reflected in policy or belong in a CCOB meeting or somewhere else for discussion. But for these purposes, we sort of broke it down by purpose. So what you see on your agenda is an organization around when we talk about curriculum instruction, where in those policies do we speak to use of technology, use of devices, why we use them as tools to enhance instruction, not as the thing that delivers all the instruction. That is, we want the narrative of, if anything, that you leave here understanding that these are all to be tools used in balance, prioritizing teacher instruction, prioritizing student engagement with one another, and prioritizing many other tools and resources that are available to students. So technology is a tool to aid, and what we continue to talk about and seek is that right balance that makes everyone happy with everything. And I know that's an ongoing journey that I've long been committed to here in Lower Merion and continue this evening. So curriculum instruction, you'll see references to policy 108 that talks about curriculum and resource materials, where we talk specifically about textbooks can be online resources. They're defined that way. We've been intentional about making sure we're, as we've developed policies over the years, like how does technology fit into the existing policies? So I just also want it to be kind of understood that we've never sort of looked at these things in isolation and tried our best to incorporate technology as it evolves with as we look at our policies. And because of that, it's not perfect. These are works in progress. They're not always timed in the exact order that we want to make sure that it's revised and reflect exactly what we're doing. So long story short, I think we've been on a long journey to incorporate technology since before the one-to-one initiative, but certainly at that time was a pretty important moment for the district, where we invested a lot of money to make sure that every student at the high school level had a laptop in their possession. And that was a real celebration, because we thought now, when we talk about equity and fairness, every kid, every child had the opportunity to have that access to learning, that learning tool that we thought was so important to be preparing our kids for the future. So having said that, you'll notice also that we talk about the purpose of having those devices in both 108 and 137. And so just to frame the larger picture, I think there's an opportunity to talk about, like, we think it's important. Maybe we want to make sure that's expressed in policy in the right way, so people understand how we're approaching the work. And then with that, understanding things like the filtering that we do, the monitoring that we do, the efforts that we take related to student data privacy. They're in different places in policy, which may make it harder to find, but the idea is to try to start laying this out so everyone is on the same page, looking at the same language, so that we can move forward ideally together with a better fundamental common understanding of where we are right now. So having said that, you can see as a list, and I'm happy to break this down further and continue the conversation on any of these topics, but I wanted to sort of start with the lay of the land.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do want to reference our meeting that we had in March and really the main themes that came out of it and what I heard as a school leader and a father and an educator and all of that, right? There were 5 major themes that I heard. And again, I appreciate everybody taking time out of their evening and coming out here and again that night to really speak on the topic. You know, I'll read through the 5 things that I really heard, the main themes, and our approach to answering those questions or concerns. One was, you know, what can teachers manage during the day? And I just jotted these down right now as I'm sitting here. Mainly, if students are supposed to be on a certain program doing things and the teacher walks away, they could switch and do something else. The second thing is when my kid gets home, they have open use of the internet to do whatever they want on the school device. The third thing was, I want to know what my parent does, as a parent, I want to know what my child does during the day and how long they're on, and I want to see the apps they use and things like that. The fourth was time on devices in school, and the fifth was looking for an option to opt out of having a computer at all for our curriculum, okay? So I'll take those 5, and I think it's really important for me to take the next 2 or 3 minutes to talk about how we're going to approach it or how I would like to approach it with my team. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Weinstein and really talk about a little bit more of that if he has anything to add, if I miss anything. You know, he's really good at having my back if I miss anything. So first one, what can teachers do to manage during the day? There's a simple program that I used in one of my past lives. It's called Go Guardian or something like that, where the teacher can actually have all of the screens on their screen and see what they're doing. So we'll work with the teachers to try to make sure they can manage better and have more tools in their toolbox to manage things at school. The home use of devices. When my child gets home, they can go on anything, right? That in conjunction with the knowledge of, I want to know how much time or what my student is accessing on the school device during the day. We purchase a filtering system called iBoss, and there are many different ones. And I'm not an expert on iBoss, but I've done some research with Bob Catalano and understand that our program that we're already subscribed to has this function in it. There are 2 things. One, it gives the option for parents to really impose more filters on the device when they walk into their house. Not every single day. If they do it once, when they come into the house and connect to your Wi-Fi, the filters are on more. I'll give you an example. Somebody's like, well, why is YouTube used as an example for in school? And now they can get home and they can watch all these YouTube videos. Well, some of the teachers use YouTube videos for educational purposes. I don't want to get into all the back and forth on is that a good practice or not. We think it is because there's educational things, but we very much understand that YouTube can be, not great if you're not looking at the right videos or you're just watching the same reel over and over again. So home use, parents would be able to impose more filters and the student wouldn't be able to go on YouTube when they walked in the house. In conjunction also with iBoss, a parent might want to know what their child does at home. Very simply, and we're talking about technology, right? You could have an app on your phone that could monitor what your child did that day, time and what apps they went on. The device doesn't have to be at home, could be for K4 as well when the kids don't bring their devices home. So we're trying, again, attack some of the things that we heard, some of the themes that we heard. Time on devices in school, we'll continue to work with our teachers. We don't want the kids on devices all day either, right? We hear you, we're parents ourselves, we're educators, we're concerned about screen time, so we'll work with our teachers more and more to lessen that, right? To make sure there's more interaction, make sure there's more playtime, make sure there's more pen and paper, hard books. When we have to do something, you heard Dr. Schwartz about printing things out, and we could be able to do that as well. And the last thing, is there an opportunity for my kids to opt out? We do not have that opportunity for you to do that, right? Our curriculum is delivered the way it's delivered, and part of that curriculum is done with electronic devices. Again, we'll limit as much as we can and have time for more interaction, but we can't have a room for 20, 30 kids that want to opt out and the rest of the school is operating differently. All right? The public schools are not just an open forum for whatever any kid needs that doesn't have an IEP. Right? It's not an accommodation that we have. So those are the 5 things that I heard. I wanted to really, again, thank you and let you know our thinking. And after that meeting, we just didn't stop and say, okay, well, whatever it may be. Talk with the board about it. We talk with the administrators about it. And the things concern us too, right? If we hear that the child's going out at home and being able to get past filters and do things at home, we don't want that happening either. That's just an example. So, Scott, you have anything that I missed or you want to add? I know I speak quickly, but...
I thought that was pretty thorough, and one of the things, so tonight there's a presentation, I know there's all throughout the learning community, and schools are notorious for this, right? Like things that demand change, whether there's state law, come to policy, and there's other things as research comes out, changes practice. So as educators, we've changed how teaching and learning has worked over I'm over 30 years doing this, and we've seen lots of changes. One of the things that you're seeing right now that's the top story in the news is what brings you out here tonight, which is that too much technology is not great. And we agree with that. It's something that we're not only responding to, but we're proactively following. So the November board meeting, and it's not the end all, but I would really encourage you to go back into the board docs, the curriculum committee of the board, and see our presentation on creating a balanced digital learning culture. These are things that we're really mindful of. You talk to a lot of our teachers, they don't want kids mindlessly on devices either. So what we should be accountable to, and we are, is when does technology enhance learning? And the ratio should be in check. It shouldn't be all throughout the day, and it's developmentally appropriate as you go from elementary, which should be a lot less, than middle school, than high school, where you'll see it a little bit more. But we're having kids doing research and accessing databases and creating multimedia projects that they're really excited about, that they want to pursue. So when the technology enhances instruction, we utilize it. But when you believe there's an abuse or your child comes home and says they feel like they're on it mindlessly throughout the day, we want to know those things. When they bypass a filter and access something that's inappropriate and you find out in any way that you can, please let us know. We're here for the partnership. We're interviewing administrators currently, and people ask questions like, what's it like to be here? Well, it's pretty tough. People move here because the community really cares about learning and wants a really good product. It's a really tough place to be average. But if you want to partner with the community and create a dynamic experience for young people to change their lives before they go forth to serve, this is what we do. We partner and you come out. So when you line up and share, I encourage you to do it in the spirit of we're listening to you and want to work with you and not battling you. We don't want students on technology in ways that prohibit learning, but just the opposite. And that ratio should be in check, and that's something we're really mindful of. And when you come and bring a topic and bring that to the forefront like this one, we listen and we will make adjustments, and Dr. Ranelli shared a pretty extensive list of what that is, and we're committed to continuing to do that. So we thank you for being here and thank you for your list.
No, thank you. I just, Carrie, you were at the meeting. Juanita, if there were anything else that you wanted to add as far as our discussions are concerned before you start asking questions?
No, I actually just want to echo Scott. One of the things that I paid a lot of attention to in the meeting was the people at the table. And one of the things that I noticed, it was a huge table. I mean, it felt like something out, like it was like 80 people. But I was actually watching all the staff at the table and how much they were nodding to the community members in the room. It was such alignment and such agreement. And it was just like, yeah, I hear you, I'm on that, and I hear you, and I want to think about that. It was so much writing things down and in alignment. And that felt like there was a lot of energy in the room and a lot of feelings because it's our kids, and that makes total sense. But it was also a lot of like, okay, we're gonna get this right and we're gonna build on it and we're gonna add it together. So when afterwards, Frank and I were talking about, Dr. Rinaldi and I were talking about it, and the first thing that we did as a team, we started interviewing each other and said, what did you hear? Like, what did you hear? Because you want to make sure you're hearing the same things, and when you didn't catch something, you make sure that you heard it right and you were picking up on it. And Dr. Rinaldi was doing the same thing with the staff. What did you hear? How did we catch it? Because you want to make a really big net and make sure we're hearing it. And then we started talking to the kids as well, the kids that were in the room and the kids that were, you know, at the table with us, and what they heard as well, and then doing our work around it. But I think that's really so much of what you said a minute ago, Anna. How do we pull this together, and how do we look at the research and the data that's in our schools, that's in our peer institutions around the state, but also in the field as well? And I'd be really, really thoughtful about when we pull from these peer institutions and really dig into that data, because a lot of this data is flying around. Dig into that data and where it's applied. Because some of that data isn't applied to K through 12 classrooms, and we have to not only look at how that data is applied, but also the motivation behind our kids. Dr. Rinaldi is sick of hearing me talk about the book 10 through 25. I'll just share that out loud right now. It's about how do we motivate our kids. To the point of one of our parents online, it's not just about how do we support our kids and make sure that they have the support of the technology and the support of the paper and pen and reading, but also how we motivate them to be adults and be intrinsically motivated to lead their lives. And there is an interplay. It is not just about doing what's best for them, it's about empowering them to lead their lives. So thank you, Scott, that was really helpful. Our teachers are really there to do the best.
I don't have other comments other than, Jason, when you see some of these programs come through purchasing, I think, I hope you approve them. For us too.
Next time I'm going to have you, Juanita, next to me on my right side, so you go first next time. So I appreciate the information. I guess from my perspective, you know, from my experience, I think both as a parent as well as talking to other parents, I'd like to see more. I think in theory, it's great to have, you know, this idea that we're limiting the use of technology in the classroom, but I think in practice it's a lot different. From my own personal experiences as well as talking to other parents, I think that the reliance on technology is different among different schools, different classrooms, different teachers. I think that there's an enormous amount of deference that's given to the teachers, and what ends up happening is that, you know, your child's in one grade with one teacher, and then in the same teacher right next, different teacher right next door, same grade, one is spending an enormous amount of time on the computer and another one isn't. And I'd like to see if there were more standards set so that as a district from the top down, there was some sort of oversight of the use of technology. I think it's important to have technology in the classroom. I think it's a great learning tool, but I think it's supposed to supplement the education of the teachers. And I think that in some cases, and this isn't everywhere, I think that sometimes there's an over-reliance of this technology. And I think it's really important to strike that balance, but have that consistency among all of the classrooms so that everyone's having that. So, and I'd like to know where, from my perspective, where, you know, I think from a curriculum standpoint, when we talk to the curriculum, you know, there are these procedures in place allegedly, but I don't know how it's getting to the different schools and the principal, like who, right, the flow and who's overseeing it and who's supposed to be overseeing it to make sure that it's actually happening in practice. So I think that's one thing. I think the other piece is that this over-reliance, I think, has created a huge issue with spelling. This is just my own little thing, but like, I think kids aren't spelling like in elementary school because autocorrect does everything, and there's this over-reliance on it. I think you had said, Dr. Rinelli, about math and paper. You can't say that it's the same application, writing on the computer and using, the tool versus a piece of paper and a pencil. I think that there's just something to be said about it. And I think that to one of the parents who had said that, like, this uphill battle, I think it would be great to know what's going on in the classroom, but like, you interrogate your child once to how much screen time they're using, and then they're never going to tell you again. I think that there's, we have to be careful as parents, right, of how much we ask and how much we don't. I think it would be a lot more efficient coming from the district and from, as a community, as opposed to the burden. I'm not saying that you want the burden on the parents, but that the parents are going to be interrogating the kids to find out how much screen time. I mean, I've tried that, and the kids just don't talk to you anymore. Like it's like, you don't get anywhere, right? And then they forget, they don't tell you, and they don't tell you about your day, and I don't think that that's what we want to create with families. So I think that that's, those are some of my thoughts. I would also, the other piece, we have attachment D, which talks about like the electronic device initiative. So I just want to know how the district is going to manage, because if we're not going to provide the opt-out, I just want to make sure that we're consistent, because in attachment D, at least from looking at it, it looks like accommodations will be made on an individual basis if people want to elect out of it. And I just want to make sure that we're consistent with that as well.
I'll start with that second part of your comments, and I think you brought attention to what we're wrestling with and what I alluded to in my rambling earlier, but the idea that sometimes what was once part of the initial, bringing into existence the one-to-one initiative was adjacent to a time when we didn't have laptops in everyone's lap. So there was an opportunity to say, like, okay, well, here's how we did it a day ago, and now everyone has a laptop. So opting out meant something a little bit different than what it means now, 15 years later, where, I made reference to like Policy 108. Textbooks are also defined as the online version of a textbook, and so everything's integrated differently than before. And to say that we would make best efforts, it's simply not an ability we have any longer to say that there would be an equivalent experience for a child who opts out. So we need to look at that, which is why it's on the agenda for discussion, and make sure that we're really clear about what we mean when we say, like, what it looks like in the absence of technology. And I think back to the point we're all talking about is an understanding about what technology in the classroom looks like as a tool, as opposed to the entirety of a student's day, which is not what we're talking about, not what we want to see. So that language will need to be adjusted to reflect, again, like the current status of how we deliver curriculum and instruction in our classrooms. So that's not proposed as revised today, but part of the discussion that we will need to have.
So I don't know if it would impact, like, again, I wasn't at the conversation that occurred, but for parents, at least for myself, I think what would put me at ease a little bit would knowing some of those other answers and how much time actually is being spent, and to have those consistent policies and procedures so that a parent knows that it's being used as something that would assist the teacher, and and the reliance, like that aspect of it. I think that, getting that information, I think that might be helpful to parents. Obviously, we still have to address attachment D, but I think that having that more transparency and having more of that information and that consistency, I think will help as parents.
Yeah, and offering, and this is the interplay with putting curriculum and policy on the same night. Scott, even the great presentation that was done in November I'm thinking how we could tie it to the policies, and Amy, I'm pulling everyone in, Team Pro Cheer, and even making a one-pager, that's really easy to say, because that was a great presentation. It's also a bit lengthy, and to your point, Jason, more accessible for families to understand what the expectations are, to also then, quite honestly, if teachers are not following that, to be able to be in conversation with principals and follow the chains that there are for resolving and have that accountability. For D, Jason, are you talking about this?
121.
Okay, that was a different one than I was looking at. Okay. Juanita, do you have any, you want to jump in?
No, basically, everything Jason just said, I think at this point, we just need a better understanding that the teachers and parents, we're all in alignment of the expectation, because as a parent, I feel the same way. I want to make sure that my child isn't on screens all the time. You know, I constantly have to make adjustments at home. And you know what? It's a fight. And that's the part of me being a parent that I have to deal with. And then I, decompress by doing something else when we have those moments. But I'm constantly redefining what the rules are and expectations are and making it clear to my child, and being aware of the effects of the things that he's seeing, because kids are watching YouTube, and this is a battle that we're dealing with right now, and we have to make sure that we can have some type of balance within our schools so that it's not a continuation from one place to the other.
And I just wanted to add to that, I was very well said, but the safety of what students are looking at as well. Like, we're very concerned about that, the safety as well as the balance, so.
Yep. Okay, so switching to time, and just name one thing, Jason, it would be helpful in our next meeting. 121, I interpret that in policy as it's access to technology at home to complete work, not opting out of technology in our school buildings. And I think that was the spirit and intent of that AR, but could be worth for additional discussion at a further point. In addition to the other points, which there's a form for objection, but both don't guarantee that something is approved. So just naming both of those nuances for further discussion. Do we have, John Bellis, or whoever's on the list? I think we got to do the list. Denise?
Well, John was first.
Sorry, I'll be really,
for this topic.
I'll be very quick. I wrote something, again, I'm going to trash it because this discussion's awesome. Really appreciate what you guys are saying. Funny story that sort of contradicts what you're saying. My third grader got caught he kind of effectively guessed the password to his colleague's profile, changed his profile to a poop emoji, and as a result, they removed his technology for 12 months, as they should have. I mean, I was upset with him for doing that. But he's now has a year with no Chromebook or whatever in the classroom, and he tells me that he's still learning, he's still, doing everything on paper, they're functioning, and I suppose they give them to him when they have to do an exam or something, like the PSSAs or something like that. So is there a difference between parents that want to opt out of, most of it, but still do what's required on the exam, the way my son is being forced to do right now? And maybe that's what you could allow people to opt out to, that level where they're still doing some but not as much. And then here's an idea, here's an opportunity for this board. What if you had, some number of parents that opted into that situation? Think of the gold mine of data you guys would have going forward. That, the group of kids that are on limited tech do better or maybe worse versus the other kids. And, over the course of weeks or months or years, I mean, that would be very valuable information to both you guys and us. So I myself haven't even decided if I want my kid to opt out. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. Yair's doing a webinar right now as we speak, which I'll watch tomorrow. I encourage you guys to also, and just keep an open mind and stay flexible. And whatever the policy was 15 years ago, it meant one thing. You guys can change it. You can do anything you want. You're the board. Thank you.
Sam Hanlon, then Jackie Mandel.
Can I just say one thing before? I mean, I think and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least from my position, I think everyone should be limited tech. Like, I think I think that's what we're all talking about is, I mean, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but like, I think the whole idea is what can we do to limit the amount of technology and balance the technology and the use of technology with the participation of and teacher, right? I mean, I think that's what we're all, I mean, maybe I'm not saying it as eloquently as you said it, but I think that's the idea. I mean, I would love to see every classroom where there's guardrails and there's technology is limited and that there's more of a focus on it. I don't know if other people feel differently, but.
I mean, I think that is I think that's a different statement for a kindergartner and a 12th grader. So I think blanket statements like that are really tricky. And I also, I think that is what Scott was articulating really well when he said that. And I think what we are all discussing is that, like everything in society, the pendulum, what Megan said earlier, the pendulum swung way too much that way. Let's one-on-one device everything, and every little four-year-old got an iPad in their face, and now all of us are like, take the iPads out of their faces and swinging back that way. So we all agree on that, but I think what we have to figure out is what's the sweet spot, and I think we're all in a more conservative spot around that, but we have to find the right balance. I don't think we can say there's a perfect formula for every single one of us that we'll all be in agreement with. Megan will try to find that sweet spot that will make everybody happy. We probably won't find one that makes everybody happy, but we're gonna darn well try. So sir, you're next.
I appreciate that. You said it much better.
Scott said it best.
Thank you. Sam Hanlon from Ballackinwood. Thank you for this discussion and also for the previous meeting. I realize these are tricky issues, and like the board chair just said, we're kind of trying to work together to find that sweet spot. I do think it is important to recognize that the sort of upsurge of parents at the elementary school level who are sort of asking for this opt-out option, it's because we basically believe the sweet spot is zero. That like the overreach was like putting these devices into elementary schools, and we've seen our kids essentially learn nothing from like spending all this time on like Dreambox, Raz Kids. I mean, I've had one go all the way through who's now at Harriton, one now in second grade, and I can tell you, like, they learned nothing from Dreambox. Like, where they learned math was in Kumon, and outside of LMSD entirely in elementary school, because in Kumon, you go and there's pen and pencil, they're learning how to stack, they're learning how to add, they're learning how to multiply. And then they basically go to, and they had great teachers, but then they go back to the school and they're just it's a silly game that's just sort of frustrating and they're not really learning anything from. And like, that is a bad system. And so I guess fundamentally, I don't really understand what the affirmative argument is for having one-in-one devices in second grade, or even third grade, or fourth grade. And I get that overall, there are important arguments for these devices, both in terms of how people kind of get introduced to technology, there are important equity arguments, and so there are good reasons that like devices in general have been, and ed tech has been brought to some degree into schools. But I just think like we need to sort of really grapple with the idea that maybe that overreach, especially at the elementary school level, needs to be corrected. And while I get that there are logistical problems with the opt-out implementation, and there are probably all sorts of other issues in terms of how that might work, an approach that responds to that parental initiative by essentially just trying to change the policy so there's no opt-out option feels like draconian and not responsive to constituents. And I would just say, just as a last thing, and I want to leave time for other people, that like, I don't think this is going away, because I just think this sort of backlash against ed tech in general is growing not just locally but nationally, and it's growing based on more and more studies showing, like, really raising concerns about how sustained use and exposure to screens and ed tech is actually hindering cognitive development. And, you know, everybody has their own stories or what have you. I'll just say so I teach at the college level at like a pretty elite institution, and even the kids there, they cannot read and analyze text or do basic really do basic cognitive things on the same level that kids even could like 10 or 15 years ago. And so I'm concerned for them, for my kids, for everybody's kids. And I just hope you guys are willing to work with the community and really think that like some real rethinking needs to happen here. And like including maybe bringing things pretty close to zero at the elementary school level. Thank you.
Okay, Jackie Mandel, and then Carrie Palmisano, I think it is.
So I first wanted to thank you all for having us here and really opening up this discussion today and last month. It's been so interesting and an eye-opening experience to hear all the stories from all of the different families in the area and all the different perspectives. I really don't have much to add as to what Sam just said. I agree with him really 100%. This is, when I went to the meeting last month, the thoughts that I had about opting out and about technology in the schools, I really didn't know what to think. But after the meeting, I was more than 100% convinced that decreased tech in school is the way to go. And I feel like this movement is also continuing to grow at the national level. It's not going away. When I see my kids come home from school, I have a second grader and I have a third grader. When they don't know a concept and they've been going on the computer and on their Chromebooks trying to play the games to learn it, it only takes them a few minutes of me getting out my pen and paper or getting out my bag of change to show them physically, this is what we're talking about. This is how they learn. And I'm afraid that if they're on screens all day long at school, their attention's going to falter. They're not going to have like the cognitive ability and the cognitive flexibility to think of new ideas and be imaginative, and also how to express themselves with your peer group. So I really do think it's an amazing opportunity to have that data set of students that are in a potentially reduced tech environment and compare them to students that are in the traditional or the current environment of Chromebooks, especially in the middle school level. So I do think it's a great opportunity to be able to use that.
As we're waiting for the next person to come up, I just want to respond a little bit. As we don't do at board meetings, here's a little bit of an opportunity to do that. First of all, the statement, I just want to clarify all day long. We really try to make sure it's not all day long. And the second part was what Mr. Hanlon, said before about learning math at Kumon. We just have to be really cognizant that everybody doesn't have the resources in the community to be able to do that. I know you all do, or you may, but we just have to be cognizant. So I know you're asking for specifics for your children, but we have to just be cognizant of the programs that and I know you're sensitive to that.
Can I just say that it's precisely because not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to go to Kumon that I wish they would learn at Kinwood. Pen and paper, not on, yeah.
We're saying the same thing, I appreciate that.
My name is Carrie Palmisano, Marion Station. I wrote something before, some of it's been covered, so I'll go quickly. I'm not very good off script. Thank you for continuing this discussion first and foremost. So it seems from prior meetings and discussions that the board and administration state that daily screen time use is low at the elementary school level. However, no direct answer has been given on daily cumulative screen time use. There are several elementary school student parents who, through dedicated research, feel strongly that opting our kids out of one-to-one devices at the elementary level has benefits far outweighing the risks. Your brain is like a muscle that strengthens with use and mental stimulation. Many of these ed tech platforms and AI have stripped away that process, and we are failing to give our kids the chance to exercise their brain for growth and development. We are not asking you to remove technology. We're just asking you to reshape or rethink how we're using it. We're asking you to give back opportunities for those aha moments when it clicks while working through something on pen and paper. Critical thinking is waning by being led to answers by technology or by simply clicking an answer on a screen and moving on. So if screen time is as minimal as has been claimed, there should be little barrier to initiate opting out. Why do elementary students need one-to-one devices? And why can't we flip the script to an opt-in policy for families who want these devices? Not everyone is as fortunate to have these at home. I totally get that. Flip the script, let families opt in. So before you learn to run, you need to learn to walk, and ed tech is skipping much of this and skipping the fundamentals. My son will come home and do his math homework, which thankfully is on paper with a pencil, but he will not write a single step down, because in school, when they do it on the screen, you're not writing anything down. He brags about this game they play where you get points for being fast and just clicking answers quickly. So I'm just really begging that we rethink how we're using technology. And as has been said, we have a group of families who want to opt out next year. We think there is little risk in doing this at the 3rd grade level. We all feel so strongly about it. We feel strongly in our kids. We feel strongly in the school that we can either prove this works or it doesn't. And we don't feel that there's a whole lot to be lost by doing that. So thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask you a quick question? Sorry. Policy is normally less formal. This feels so board meeting-y. So I heard what you said tonight a little bit differently than I've heard before about the opting out. What I heard you say tonight is opting out of one-to-one devices versus technology. So, and this could just be you, and I don't want to put you on a spot, so we can talk later too, but is your perspective of still having technology for use in the classroom by teachers at certain moments, or is it opting out totally of using technology at all?
I don't want to speak for other people. My perspective on this is my child doesn't need his own personal Chromebook at the elementary level. And I'm speaking at the elementary level. I don't have perspective further on, but he doesn't need his own personal Chromebook. I am not opposed to a technology corner where there's computers that the screens face the classroom, and there are well-documented time for use during the school week. And it's not, maybe it's not every day, but you know, as a supplement to learning, and they're not all flipping up their own Chromebooks and finding ways around to text, essentially text by Google Docs and emailing and all of that. So yes, I'm not anti-tech, but I do think we need to dial it back. And I'm just begging that we look into this.
Thank you, and I understand everyone's different. I just want to like get under and make sure I'm understanding the nuance in what you're saying. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to do one thing. It's 9:01, so just so that you're aware.
Denise,
of
we
the
might
time.
just go over, you know.
And next we have Teresa Elko, then I think it's Paige Gary. I'm sorry if it's hard to read the handwriting. And then Lee Spear Barton.
Oh, do you want to go? You were ahead of me.
I'm sorry, Anna, yeah, I'm sorry.
Do you want to go?
Am I next? Well, you were next, but I had to cross because you spoke earlier. That was my fault. So you can go, Teresa, and then you can get up after. Sorry.
Okay. I'll be quick. I'm Teresa Elko. I'm from Linwood. I'm the mother of a kindergartner and then a soon-to-be kindergartner. I had something prepared as well. I guess I just want to echo the sentiment that a lot of others have expressed today. One, I really feel strongly that one-to-one devices at the kindergarten level does not enhance or supplement or enrich education really in any meaningful way, especially based on what I've seen and heard anecdotally from my own daughter about the games that she's been playing in school. I don't think that she's actually getting any educational value from it. And I'm very data-driven, and I've been trying to find out what is the rationale supporting some of these educational tech tools that we're using. I haven't really found much supporting it, especially at such a young age group. And I similarly, I would love to opt my kid out of a one-to-one iPad. I'm not opposed to her going to a computer lab or bringing the cart of laptops into the room periodically when there's a very intentional use for it. And I'm not anti-technology. I certainly appreciate that there's value to it when used in a very intentional way. But I think I would echo the sentiment here that I don't think that's what's happening now. I understand that the pendulum at one point was very woo, we're very excited about tech. At one point it seems like access to tech was itself a deliverable, something that was measurable, something that we thought might support children's education. I'm not seeing the data that supports that, and I'm curious, I would love for the board to I guess, comment on, how are we measuring how these ed tech tools are impacting our children's education at any level, whether it's the apps, the devices. I would love to know how it's impacting their education, their test scores, literacy, really any measurable educational outcome at all. Based on what I've seen, I find it a little bit discouraging, but, I would love to be proven wrong, and I guess I would just love for the use of the technology in my daughter's education to be more data-driven. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for hearing my second speech. My name is Anna Shaven. I live in Bryn Mawr. I just wanted to talk about private equity in education because I learned a lot about the iReady stuff from the March meeting, and I wanted to figure it out. Right now, and I feel like you guys are in a position where you're balancing, now I understand that you guys are balancing many different forces. But today, Pennsylvania public school districts and charter schools regularly contract with private companies for educational functions. This started in the early 2000s and 2010s. They used to do maintenance. The private equity ran like busing, schools, cafeteria stuff, and then they decided that it was too hard to deal with the actual stuff, so they weren't getting their money back. So they went into educational services. So Curriculum Associates, which produces the iReady curriculum, is private equity. And I think it's a fantasy for all of us. We all know what private equity is. We've seen what they've done, real estate and other areas. They found the honeypot of public education taxpayer funds, and their interest is not in building the content or character or cognition of our kids. It's making money. And how do they do that? Well, data. How do they access our kids' data? And there's lawsuits going on right now against iReady and Curriculum Associates because these parents think that the program is accessing their kids' learning times, like specific time, how long it takes for them to understand something, the errors that they make, their personality. It's like trying to get inside their head as much as it can. So I have a proposal. There's another math program. It actually does have workbooks. It's called Beast Academy. I just wanted to throw that out there in case people were not familiar with it. It's quite good. There is a complete workbook section. It doesn't require tech, but you can also utilize the tech for homework. And by tech, I just mean computers. But
I don't mean to interrupt. What was that called? What was that called?
It's called Beast Academy. I don't work for them. I don't earn any money from that. And I don't know if that's the best program. It's just a program that I wanted to contribute. But I think this is something that we need to consider, and we really rely on you as the board. It's not just, it is obviously the impact of screens and devices on our kids, but it's also a predatory part of our economy and the market that is trying to gain access and gain control over our kids' education, and that's not their primary purpose. Their primary purpose is profit. So thank you. Please help us and defend our kids. Thank you.
The handwriting was really hard to read, but I think it's Paige. Is it Paige? Okay. And then after that, it's Lee and then Randy.
Hi, I'm Pooja Garg. I'm from Wynwood. I spoke at the March meeting about my middle schooler, so I thank you for addressing some of those concerns and acknowledging them. I'd love to hear more about iBoss, how it's going to be implemented, GoGuardian as well, and more specifically the filters that are going to be put in place at school. I'm happy to put in whatever filters I need at home, but I want to know what's going to happen outside school, outside the house too, so be it in the bus or at school. as well. So I'd love to hear more information as that comes up as an opportunity. I also have 2 elementary school kids at Marion, and I just wanted, again, put out some anecdotes on what's going on at the elementary school level. I think a lot of this ed tech that we're using is kind of the tail wagging the dog. My first grader comes home and says that we're using Type Pals on iPad because we're preparing to type for the PSSAs. I think maybe it's too harsh, but that's really ridiculous that a first grader is learning to type for PSSAs rather than learning to write with pen and paper. They were given an opportunity at one of those rare days in Feb and March of this brutal winter where we actually had a nice day. First graders were actually given an opportunity to choose whether they wanted to go outside for PA or have indoor iPad time. Guess what they chose? iPad time. I'm surprised that they were even given that opportunity to have that choice. So I would love to hear, I want teachers to have flexibility in the classroom in how they're going to teach. But there definitely is an overuse of technology, over-reliance of technology, and I want to see what policies we can put in place, or procedures or whatever guidelines, recommendations, how they're going to be implemented. And again, I speak for myself, but I would like to opt out of the one-on-one device to prevent this kind of behavior or choices that first graders are making. Right now, I'm not opposed to technology entirely. So if they have a computer section where they go to do some use some additional tools to actually aid in the educational process, I'm fine with that. Type Pals, even if it's on a computer lab for a first grader, I'm going to opt out of that too, just FYI. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leith. I live in Bryn Mawr. I have a first grader and a fifth grader, and I spoke at the March meeting. And one of the things I spoke about was how the interpretation for what is minimal use is, it varies. So what can be very little to one person can be a lot to another. But I specifically wanted to talk about how I've heard a few times this evening that we want to have intentional use in the classroom, and I want to thank you all. I really, truly believe that we want the best for the children in this district. But speaking for the fifth grade level, it is a device-first classroom in my son's classroom. It is a digital-first classroom. By my son's approximation, it's about 70% of his day. And as I mentioned at the March meeting, he is 10, and he's at the age of still learning to write. And if 70% of his day is spent on the computer, he's not having the opportunity to develop those skills. And if we're considering what's developmentally appropriate, actually still continuing to develop those fine motor skills, like Puya was talking about with a first grader, it's not actually developmentally appropriate for a first grader to be typing. And I'm also speaking as a second-year grad student in social work, so I'm interested in the social emotional, but also what is developmentally appropriate. I'm doing a school social work certificate, working with children in the elementary and middle school levels. So there's that part of it, because it really is a digital first right now in my child's experience. And another part of it is the culture of the school district. My son is the only child that he knows in his pod who is not taking their Chromebook home. I'm so thankful that it is an option that he doesn't take his Chromebook home, but he's the only one that he knows who doesn't. So I'm wondering how many parents know that that's a real option. You can tick that box and you can decide not to do it, and he's doing well academically, he's doing well socially, but by not putting that first for our families, we're actually encouraging constant contact for fifth graders who are 10 and 11 years old. So I wanted to highlight that. Also, as a grad student, I'm really steeped in data. I enjoy doing the research, and one of the issues we have right now is that there actually isn't lots of research on this specific issue. As we talked about in the March meeting, things accelerated really, really quickly after COVID. And so we're getting piecemeal, but it's not so easy to study children, you probably know this, like the data the parents have to opt in, it's up for interpretation. So when we're talking about how we're measuring what best practices are, it's up for interpretation. The other part is the private equity-backed part. I'll just speak about it really briefly. I mentioned this in the March meeting as well, but what these private equity-backed companies are doing is they're really feeding or promoting the dopamine release in people. We see it with social media, but we're seeing it with really, really young children. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter hormone that's like a messenger, a chemical messenger. But what it does is it keeps us wanting more and more and more, do it again. It's a craving that is actually not satisfying. And what we do know, what studies do show, is that it's satisfying to have a relationship with your teacher, with your peers. That's where the deeper level of connection happens. Another thing that we have data on is how long it takes for people to change between their tasks. So if we have a computer, I'm sure we've had multiple tabs open. I can see that multiple tabs are open on some of these computers here, but switching between tasks can take up to 23 minutes and 15 seconds. It can take quite a long time. So for a 10-year-old, speaking for my son who's a 5th grader, it can take a lot of time when I have my email open, I have the program open, I have my schoolwork open, I'm also trying to learn to type. So that's real time that it takes to switch in between tasks, and what that affects is our ability to have deep focus and deep thinking, which is what we want when we're learning. And I brought this up at March. This is my last point, but probably my highest concern is for the safety, because we do know, and we did bring it up in March, that the children can access any website that they want right now by just copying and pasting a Google link into, copy and pasting a link into Google Docs. And Google Docs is a program that's used, at least by my son right now in 5th grade. And so they can access any website. It's not just YouTube. I was really horrified to hear of some of the games that were played. I'm not going to name them here because I don't want them to be accessed any more than they have been. But I would really appreciate if something could be sent out to the parents and families in the district about specifically the safety concerns, because there is unmonitored access. It's really taxing on the teachers, I'm sure administration, to monitor what's going on. But right now there are immediate safety concerns about what is being accessed, whether it's at school or at home on the school-issued devices. Echoing some of the parents here, I'm definitely in favor of a more intentional approach and a definition of what that is, which can be achieved. And as far as saying that it's too late to dial us back, we have some excellent models in countries around the world who are doing this. And I'll just close by naming Sweden, Finland, Denmark, the Netherlands, Japan, Italy, and actually China too, who turns off Wi-Fi while students are taking tests. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Let's not talk about China. Randy Harris.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for staying a little bit later. My name is Randy Harris. I live in Ballackinwood. I have a middle schooler and I have an elementary school student. I'm a parent here, but I'm also speaking as a public school teacher who's celebrating her 20th year in education, not in Lower Merion School District, but in public. I teach in public education, so I have these comments prepared. I can speak all day to 8-year-olds, but this is different for me. I also attended the meeting at Harriton, and even with all of the years under my belt in the classroom, I left with my eyes open in a way that they hadn't been before. From my observation as a parent, the use of screens greatly increases from elementary to middle school in our district, and I'm really worried about excessive screen use, extreme distraction, quality of digital platforms being used, and the misuse of these devices by students within the walls of the classroom. And I feel like our district is asking our little kids to exercise a level of self-regulation around technology that many adults struggle with. At that Harriton meeting, it was discussed that perhaps the pendulum has swung too far. We've talked about that a little bit tonight, in the wrong direction or in the other direction. And I mean, I remember as an educator, when we first got all the devices, it was super exciting. They felt like a real privilege, a way to elevate and create something that, you know, would never have been possible with just pen and paper. And they can still be that. And I certainly also agree, you know, there's room for technology in the classroom, certainly. But I'm wondering, like, how much agency teachers have in district to ask whether maybe this device or this application is the right tool in that moment for this child in this lesson, when so much curriculum is built around the technology. I also was on the district's FAQ section for the one-to-one device program, and one goal of the initiative is to promote and facilitate student critical thinking, creativity, and innovation for lifelong learning. I share the same goal for my children. And I also want to say the teachers in this district are incredible. And so while these can be used as a tool to help them, we don't want to sideline them either. But I'm wondering how our students could also develop those critical thinking skills, be more innovative, be more creative when they're toggling between calculating the answer to an online math problem on Amplify, for example, while they're simultaneously trying to beat their high score on Geometry Dash. If I were a student, I might be tempted to just ask Google Gemini to solve the math problem in order to get back to the dopamine distractions that await on another tab on my screen. I know the district's website also states that you guys are evaluating these goals using different instruments, collecting data to evaluate effective implementation of the program. And also on the website, it says that there's annual reports that are made to the school board. So I do just have like questions like, what's the date of the most recent report? What kind of instruments are used to really figure out whether these apps and platforms are successful, whether they're being implemented as to meet these goals? Also unrelated, other questions. What resources is the district using to teach digital citizenship and digital literacy? I know that they can be hard to find. Also, how many, Dr. Anelli was talking about disciplinary incidents for personal devices, and I was wondering how many disciplinary incidents are connected with the one-to-one school devices. So that's why at this point I see, like, having that formal opt-out option for parents doesn't seem like a radical ask. Other significant school programs like standardized assessments and even certain health curricula afford parents some degree of choice. But unlike those programs, this one is ever present. Partnering with families to provide a formal opt-out option will always be putting our children first. And I know that that's all we all want anyway. Thank you for your time.
Just because this is a committee, we get to talk more instead of a formal meeting.
Yeah.
And I know it's really late, so we'll do it really quick.
I know.
It's mostly in curriculum. A lot of those questions that you had happened in curriculum, so
Yeah.
they happen, like the digital citizenship. We go over that in curriculum. So Scott can kind of run down. I mean, he looks exhausted right now because they get up so early. He can run down in the different meetings that we've had that, but they are all in the curriculum meeting that we review. We go through it, digital citizenship, but we can chat afterwards and go through that. That's the best that we do annually on a yearly basis and go through, so we can kind of point you in the direction of where they happened already in the past year, but also for the next time around too.
But just like you've purchased iReady, do you have like a curriculum you've purchased for digital citizenship?
We do teacher training on it, and there it is. What is it? I'm blanking on it. I went to the personally. There is a digital citizenship. What is the? It's a IS. What is it? This is what happens. It's 9:30 at night. There's a national organization that wrote the digital citizenship standards across the nation.
Common Sense Media?
No, it's not Common Sense Media. They have an annual conference every single year, and they wrote the standards on it, and our teachers presented on it and how they apply the standards, and there's 2 different courses that they teach our kids on it, and the kids then work through it, and our teachers get training on it. Do you remember that?
I was just going to say, if you put digital citizenship in the Find It Fast link on the district website, it'll take you to the digital citizen, again, it's getting late, citizenship page, and it has websites, books, podcasts, try it with your kids safety products, a glossary, and a link to Jen Goldberg, who's the elementary technology lead, her Tech It Out newsletter that she publishes for parents and guardians.
So I have been on
And those lessons
there.
go all the way through high school, so we have instructional tech coach for each level. So they have a comprehensive curriculum that goes all the way through middle to high school as well.
Okay. And it's ISTE is the organization that kind of moved this forward, so.
ISTE. I've presented for them before, yeah.
Cool, so then you know it well.
And the school-issued incidents were 68.
68 for
68 for one-to-one, for
devices
for the school-issued devices, and the personal devices, cell phones, were 141.
Wow, that's interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
Moving
Amy,
on.
I think you would be next with public comment.
And bear with me because people were adding as the meeting went on, so they're not necessarily in order. Jessica Cohen from Marion Station asks, how can a parent implement the controls Dr. Ranelli outlined on their child's computer today, or is this not available yet? And for clarification, are you stating that opt-out is only available through a 504 or IEP?
So it is not available at home, and don't really want to comment on special ed things as far as the case managers or department is concerned.
Again, from Subhashini Subramanian of Ballackinwood, and they have several comments. How do you motivate a 9-year-old in middle school to be an adult, but they have the same access to technology that a 13-year-old has? They go on to comment, how is AI access to a 9 to 10-year-old helpful? Socratic methods and learning by failing is a very important aspect of growing up. AI essentially takes away that experience because you don't have to think critically to answer anymore. What is the barrier to having physical textbooks? There is something to having to highlight, write notes on side that helps with retention. E-books offer mobility, but that doesn't offer the same tactile benefits of learning through textbooks. The school district has the resources to buy textbooks. Why don't we start moving the pendulum back to something more balanced? To summarize the risk of one-to-one devices from the March 23rd meeting, students, failing to pay attention to the teacher, gaming during school hours, risk of exposure to games like Five Nights with Epstein and violent videos, gamified slot machines like apps not appropriate for learning. Happy to add more. What liability is LMSD ready to take if our kids become impacted by any of these risks? A lawsuit, maybe? The board has not yet shown an iota of evidence to show that since 2012, when you adopted one-to-one devices, your PSSA scores have improved, because we have seen it from the PA Department of Education. We, about 200 parents across LMSD schools wanting to opt out. Are you asking us to move to private schools? Next year, this would be 500 parents and increasing across the country, just like Sam said before. They go on to say what Dr. Ranelli and the board has shared today as next steps have done nothing to show these risks would be reduced. There's another comment, but I don't see a full name. And town, the previous commenter goes on to say, we all want to opt out of only one-to-one devices, but set up common computers, computer lab, or common Chromebooks that students use only at specific times, and then put them at the back of the classroom much of the day. I would ask the board and the school administration to work with parents and think critically about how we can make one-to-one opt-out work instead of flexing admin muscles and changing the policy to shut down the conversation temporarily and inviting backlash. This will help with giving school a good data on what works and what doesn't. I want to add Singapore, to Carrie's list, I spent a good part of last week talking to parents who have children in public schools in Singapore. They embrace technology, but it's very controlled. Children in Singapore do not have access one-to-one devices until they are 12 years old. AI access is intentional and built for purpose and curriculum, and there are tech-enabled guardrails on what you can ask or do with AI and not. Singapore devices also switch off after 9 p.m. every day to promote early websites. The access to internet is also controlled and only through the school's platform. That is the end of the public comments.
Great. Any final comments from board? Okay. And Kristen, do we have to, okay, we moved the things forward from earlier. Okay. So I just want to close out by thanking everyone here again. I believe the majority of us in the community and collaborating together recognize that we are working towards this, and really the reason we listed out even all of the policies that Tech has mentioned is to start to really dig into this and come to some collaborative solutions. And with that, I know that everyone will not be happy with whatever is determined, because that is difficult to do, but we're definitely committed to continuing to work together and make progress in these areas for our students that we have shared goals for. And so it is late, and our next policy committee is May 11th, and we will be here. And in the meantime, if there are other follow-ups or questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and thank you.
Will these devices be talked about at the next meeting?
Which devices, Mr.?
These devices.
Oh. Sorry, I was, the policies specifically. Yes, because we moved from discussion. We'll probably stay in discussion for a little bit. So we'll send the agenda in advance, and feel free to reach out if there's additional comments. Thank you.